Welcome to the extermination of reality, propaganda, lies, and disinformation. I'm Dr. Miller, and early in my career as a scientist and physician, I noticed that there were several facts about how the human mind and body function physiologically that lead to illness and dysfunction. These facts were lying around like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle on the table. Nobody seemed to pay much attention to them. But it was clear to me that there were certain beliefs people acquired early in their lives that would lead them to react emotionally later on. That these emotions were associated with the stress response, that the stress response chemicals weakened the cells of the body, producing an imbalance that then allowed diseases, illnesses, and harmful addictions to arise. Fortunately, I learned something about hypnosis, and then through the use of hypnotic states, I found that I could trace the source of illnesses and dysfunctions in my patients, rewrite some of their harmful beliefs and stress triggers, rewire the nervous system, and create remarkable healing of their illnesses. So I've dedicated decades to educating people on overcoming fear-induced afflictions. And I think I can see how it works and how to combat it. And in this presentation, I will attempt to demystify the intricacies of propaganda, to illuminate how hypnotic techniques have been weaponized to manipulate the unconscious mind, our unconscious minds, to deceive us and alter our beliefs and our behaviors. And I want to provide practical methods using experiential mind tools to arm you against this mental onslaught. To me, the gist is quite clear of what's going on, that there is a lust for wealth, for sex and power, which is more important to the overclass than the welfare of the millions of people their decisions affect, and billions, that billions of dollars are invested annually to concoct propaganda, to influence our purchasing decisions, dictate our electoral preferences, and keep us trapped in the misinformation silos they have created. Silently, the information age morphed into the information highway. And we're now slipping into the AI age, the age of artificial information. Soon, according to the wise ones, those who should know, the brightest folks who are every day dealing with this, what they tell us that sometime, perhaps within the next 2 years, we will be flooded with deep fakes and increasingly sophisticated mental manipulations by various sociopaths, narcissists, megalomaniacs, and cyber trolls, all funded by the overclass, the corporations, and political factions, and governments, our own, as well as foreign governments. Distinguishing truth from fiction threatens to become an even more uphill battle than an impossibility. In fact, you'll be hard put to know who is serving you the information you are consuming. I've dedicated decades to educating people on overcoming fear-induced afflictions, and I think some of how it works and how to combat it. And so I will attempt to demystify some of the intricacies of propaganda, illuminate how unconscious tricks can deceive us, and provide some practical methods using experiential mind tools to arm you against this mental onslaught. Most often what I'm presenting has to do with how to use mind tools like deep relaxation, guided imagery, mindfulness, and wisdom to balance mind and body, thereby preventing illness, and how to use these same mind tools to combat and relieve illness and dysfunction. And lately, in my presentations, I've been addressing how to create functional relationships with other people, how important such relationships are to our ongoing happiness, health, and longevity. And as we move into the artificial information age, I hold that this is going to be extremely important. And I can see how the misinformation that's been passed around has caused numerous divorces, separations, people moving out of their neighborhood, and so forth. But as I understand it, it's going to worse. As usual, my presentations are based upon a combination of science, ancient wisdom, as well as my professional experience working with people individually and in groups. Now, as you know, because I work from a purely holistic standpoint, it's also necessary to pay careful attention to the developments in our environment and what we can do to help handle the many crises and challenges that come along. The wise ones keep telling us that we are one, that the distance between us is an illusion, that we are one with our environment, and that to be healthy, we need a healthy ecological balance within ourselves, milieu intérieur, around ourselves, and within our environment. When I had just finished medical school, people told me that my efforts were in vain. I'd never be able to change the American medical system. They were not quite right, because we have changed it, and quite significantly. And now they're saying the same thing about the world. It's too late. We're headed for disaster. There's nothing you can do to change it. To which I answer, maybe. You see, I still agree with the Roman rule. Those who do not believe a thing is possible should get out of the way of those who are doing it. Because the situations we're going to look at are serious, huge, and dangerous. And because our culture has programmed us to react with such life or death emotional responses as anxiety and fear and frustration and anger and rage, it's important for us to realize, what I'm sure you're aware of if you've been paying attention to me, is that such emotions have the effect of inhibiting the higher levels of your mind, blocking you from being able to see the whole picture clearly, and limiting you to being only able to see and perceive how to run or how to fight or flight behaviors, trying to deal with the symptoms. As usual, my belief is that we desperately need to go to the source of these problems that we're confronting, and to do something there at the source. That's what we need. Let's do that as usual by taking a moment to relax, to allow yourself to be in a comfortable position, to be aware there's no other place that you need to be going at this moment in time, and to understand that these harmful emotions are always generated by our thinking about the past or creating negative thoughts about the future. The direct antidote to those emotions is to bring yourself into the present moment, into this place where you are right now, to be aware of the surface beneath your body. Be aware of the time of day or night. Be aware of your breath as it breathes you. And allow yourself to settle back into the place where you are sitting or lying. Give yourself permission to pause right now, to relax and come into the present moment, to become clearly aware of the fact that as long as your breathing is happening, as long as your body is breathing, everything's okay, and you can relax deeply. And as you relax your physical body and clear your mind of unnecessary thoughts, unnecessary and distracting emotions drain away. And you can allow your eyelids to gently close. Or if you wish, you may allow them to remain open and focus on a single point in the distance. Or you can gently allow them to roll upward behind your closed eyelids and look toward the back of your head. And with all of your awareness focused on that point, think to yourself the words, the very true words. There's nowhere I have to go at this moment in time. And recognize the truth of those words. And now think or say to yourself the following. There's no problem that I have to solve at this moment in time. And therefore I give myself permission to relax. Good. Now allow yourself to be aware of your breathing. The air comes in and the air goes out. Simply allow yourself to be aware. Are you breathing in right now, or are you breathing out? Just identifying this is an in-breath and this is an out-breath. That's all. What recognizes your in-breath is your mind. The object of your mind, of your mindfulness, is the in-breath. And you are focused on it as other thoughts begin to fade into the background. There's a breathing in. This is my in-breath. And with the out-breath, think to yourself, this is my out-breath. And for this moment, your out-breath is the object of your total focus. Breathing in, this is my in-breath. Breathing out, you think, this is my out-breath. As each breath follows effortlessly, like waves on the ocean. Wave follows wave, breath follows breath. Thinking slows down until thinking is gradually vanishing, and there is simply breathing in and breathing out. The past does not exist and can never exist again. Breathing in, breathing out. The future does not exist and never has. There is only the present now. This breath, this moment, the only moment that actually exists. Breathing in and breathing out. And soon you begin to really enjoy each breathing, and each fresh new breath is like a celebration of life. And each breath out is a joyful release into the miracle of being alive. And anytime any unnecessary thoughts enter your mind, just think of your nostrils as like two little passageways, like two little exhaust pipes that go up into your mind. And with each breath out, imagine breathing those unnecessary thoughts out through your nostrils, warm. And with your next breath in, breathing in cool, fresh, cleansing air, flowing in, swirling through your mind, sweeping away all shadows. Your thoughts come more and more slowly, and there's more space between your thoughts. Sinking deeply into the spaces between your thoughts. Good. And as you grow more and more relaxed, you can feel yourself as though you're floating, light, gentle, fluffy feeling of floating, floating up as though you can float freely through time and space, floating to a very, very pleasant experience, floating gently, gradually allowing yourself to imagine that right now you are stepping into a beautiful dew-sparkling morning meadow. You feel the warmth of the sunlight warm on your body, smelling the sweet perfume of fragrant flowers. Look around, see the colors. The harmony and beauty of this most special place reaches out softly to you, as though the soft grasses and beautiful blooms have been especially arranged for you, welcoming you, allowing yourself to see or imagine you can see their colors, the reds, the yellows, orange, blue, calling to you. welcoming you. This is your special place. Enjoying it. Breathing out all distractions. Seeing it as clearly or dimly as you can. But just imagine you're there. Imagine yourself leaning back against the soft, moss-covered trunk of a wise old tree. You sense its support. You rest here and enjoy the feelings of peace and comfort for a while, even allowing your eyelids to close in this special place. Good. And now, taking this feeling with you, let yourself gradually return back to an awareness of where you are located in space and time. Gently, gradually, you feel yourself slowly being drawn upwards, floating up as though your entire body is lighter than air. And you're lifting gently and so slowly, floating up, and yet feeling grounded and centered, knowing that you always have this place within you can return to. Another deep breath in, and as you let it out, allow your eyelids to gently begin to open slowly, feeling more and more wide awake, just perceiving the colors around you, slowly, slowly filling with a sense of alertness, a feeling of energy, coming back in your own time now, to being wide awake, feeling alert and clear. Good. And take a moment and notice how comfortable you feel. So, today I want to focus on that situation that has been problematic for so long and yet growing exponentially in the last few years. The situation I'm referring to has to do with the truth, with honesty, and with the tsunami of disinformation we've been subjected to. It has to do with the enormous, overwhelming challenge of who to believe, especially when it comes to making decisions on who to trust and who to vote for. In my 2009 book, which is Our Culture on the Couch, I talked about a particular phenomenon. The book's name is Our Culture on the Couch, 7 Steps to Global Healing. As I pointed out in that book, instead of our political parties being able to respect the various opinions of each other and negotiate in good faith to find compromises that can work for everyone or at least most people, instead they've moved into opposing camps where they pay attention only to the limited selection of information that circulates within their separate silos. No longer do we see the notion of, I respect you and your right to a different opinion, but I see the problem differently and have come to a different conclusion. Instead, we say, I'm 100% right and you are a stupid, deranged idiot. Mutual respect is rare, and contempt, accusations, name-calling, and death threats are rapidly becoming the order of the day. This is not the USA that I learned to respect as a young person. I learned that our citizens recognize the inherent dignity of every individual, that our beliefs and our behaviors are grounded in the Christian teaching that we are all created equal and made in the image of God. This profound understanding stirs our hearts to champion the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to everyone. Ours is not merely an idealistic dream, but a call to action, reminding us that love and compassion should be the guiding forces in our interaction with one another. And we can see it in the selflessness of communities coming together in times of crisis, extending a helping hand to those in need. We witness it in the dedication and sacrifice of countless individuals who work tirelessly to build a brighter future for all. It's the love and compassion that bind us as a people, transcending differences and forging a path towards a more inclusive and just society. I cried real tears every time I heard the Star-Spangled Banner. Those were my beliefs. Now I see us becoming more and more a nation of bullies, not only bullying each other, but also bullying other nations, to the point where fewer and fewer of them believe in the democracy that so proudly we hailed in the twilight's last gleaming. Even some of the Christian movements are behaving in ways, I'm sure, that would cause dear Jesus to sit down and weep if he hasn't already given up and gone home. And while we fight each other like greedy, spoiled brats, autocracies all around the world are increasing in number and strength, while democracies are dwindling in the face of the pathetic example that the United States is setting. We live in a nation of intense polarization in which people argue violently, primarily because they want their side to win. And the truth is completely secondary. As they used to say, truth is on the town. It's crucial to know our minds, because if we don't, we're sitting ducks or suckers every moment. Just read the papers. Look at the lies that are spread about COVID. Millions of people are dying, right? And yet we are spreading lies. Just look at the struggles that are happening. Look at so many lies, so many dishonest people. How do we make the right choice? And now we have 3 nuclear-armed nations, each capable of destroying our global civilization. And the leaders aren't even talking to each other. We've got a big problem here. And the reason I suggest that we relax before we think about such things is it's not useful for us to become frightened. So take a moment and relax. And that's because fear and anger and frustration and rage, all those things are emergency situations designed for life or death threats that you're facing within the next 5 or 10 seconds. And in those circumstances, those feelings, those emotions are good. They help strengthen you so you can run faster or fight harder. But when the problem needs us to use our higher mind, our wisdom, to be guided by our spirit, then we don't want those emotions around. So we go to that special place. And just be aware that there's a real challenge. And that by thinking about it properly, we can actually bring about the change that we want to bring about. So I'd like to share something with you.
Even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you. Stay woke, bitches.
I don't know if you were ready for that, but just an example of what deep fake can do already. And it's changing exponentially. So very soon, we're going to be seeing propaganda for the election. We're going to see deep fakes. We're going to see lies that are offered to us. And you won't even know if the person that you're listening to is really the person that you're listening to, or if it's just a fake saying something that's not true. How are we possibly going to know what's going on? How can you possibly make an intelligent decision? Well, maybe you can because you're very bright. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here watching my presentation. But, well, look at all those people out there who are going to be misled and confused. Now, in the past, I talked about there being two specifically different ways of dealing with a challenge. One I called the old paradigm, and I'm talking about how to think. And it means when a person sees a problem, they immediately break it into pieces. They compare, analyze, and contrast. There's another way of looking at things, which is called a holistic way. And this way involves our looking at things by looking for holes, seeking connections between things, and looking at things with an eye towards seeing what's good, what's functioning well, and what things are connected to each other. One story that kind of represents this notion is a fellow who's driving down the country road, and he's fuming because he's just had an argument with his girlfriend who's decided she wants to be a feminist. And as he's approaching a curve in the road, suddenly a woman coming toward him in the other direction, swerving to the wrong side of the road and coming near to actually sideswiping him. Then, as her car passes by, she yells at him at the top of her lungs, "Pig, pig!" Well, this makes him even more irritated, and he yells a curse back at her and angrily stomps on the gas and speeds up as he enters the turn, only to run smack into a great big pig standing in the middle of the highway. He heard her words as a criticism and not a warning. He saw her as an enemy, not as possibly a friend who was trying to communicate something with him. Other examples would be if you receive a memo from the boss saying he'd like you to step into his office. It might be good, or do you immediately say, oh, it's probably going to be bad? Or if you go to a party where 4/5 of people in that party are of a very different race or culture, maybe they're white or black or Muslim or whatever, how are you going to feel? Are you going to say, ooh, these people probably don't like me? Or are you going to say, let me see who's here and what people I like and what people I want to connect with, you know? And so this is the difference between the paradigm of violence or conflict. What I talk about as being thinking that is characterized by analytical processes. You're looking at either or, black or white, differentiating, fragmenting, choosing good or bad, exclusiveness, critical ways of thinking, judgmental ways of thinking, contemptuous ways of thinking, rejecting, debating, attacking. All of these are basically the same approach to thinking. And it's the kind of thing that we see when we see racism and sexism and white supremacy thinking and homophobia, nationalism, anti-Semitism, elitism, xenophobia, ableism, ageism. All of these are this kind of old paradigm thinking. And that is directly opposed to the unifying, inclusive energy of the kind of thinking that I call love with a capital L. Because instead of being critical and disrespecting and rejecting, what we're looking at are the kinds of thoughts and ways of examining the world that focuses upon shared values and integration, inclusiveness, caring and intimacy, balance and harmony. And I often refer to that as the urge to merge, because it's not just like loving that you have when you feel your child in your arms? Can you feel that love? You know what it's like. But I want you to look within and feel, again, that sense of what it's like to feel that together with someone, that connected. Now, all the way from a romantic kind of attraction, which is certainly very powerful, or the kind of togetherness, the wanting to be one and happy that you feel with your family or with your good buddy or with a sibling, all kinds of friendships, and even the love that you might feel for an animal, for a pet, or for animals in general. Just let yourself feel that connection when everyone's voting for the same thing, or if you're on a team, or if you're in the operating room, all focused on being successful. There's an urge to merge. Plato's cave is an allegory that Plato used, and the notion was in Plato's cave that it's as if we're all inside of a cave and we're chained to a wall. We cannot see reality, but there's a bright light outside the door of the cave, and what we're seeing is the shadow of things and people that move in front of that cave door. But what we're seeing is distorted. It's twisted by the walls of the cave, but we think this is reality because it's the only contact with reality that we have. And sometimes we crawl up to the entrance of the cave and look out, but the light is so bright that often we fail to be able to really even look at it. So that's how we all are. We are chained to the wall, trained and programmed by what we're exposed to in our culture. That's how we got into these silos. It wasn't that way in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Yeah, there was some, but nothing like what we're seeing now, because folks have learned to use our media to manipulate us by using basically mass hypnosis. As any hypnotherapist can tell you, that's what we're looking at is hypnosis. And our unconscious minds are being manipulated for their benefit and not our benefit. And so with the information that you have, if you were brought up in the United States, as I was when I first started seeing women walking around wearing burqas, and they said, no, every woman has to wear this outside or we might cut her arms off, or worse, or stone her. It was weird to me. It just didn't feel comfortable. Meanwhile, people brought up in that culture who comes over here, let's say, and they find themselves on the beach in Rio de Janeiro or downtown in Hollywood. What are they going to make out of it? It's very confusing and very odd, and you just want to get back to what you knew. So, and this is what we see with our internet, and that's especially true for social media, which our young people are getting, attached to. And they look on there and, well, I don't know what they're feeling. Maybe they're reading a very embarrassing story that someone has posted about one of their classmates. Or maybe she's reading, discovering that her ex-husband is using revenge porn to punish her, of all things. Or perhaps he's reading what someone has written about Democratic congressmen participating in blood rituals where they cannibalize young children. Maybe he'll go out and get a gun. Who knows? Maybe these three beauties are creating a selfie that will cause thousands of young women to hate their bodies. Studies show that teenage almost invariably feel more depressed and down and out after a session of social media. The algorithms do this on purpose because they then offer products that promise to give a release or relief from the pain that's picked up by the unconscious mind. Constantly using distraction to pull us in directions that we don't really want to go in. Okay, let me pause for a moment and mention that you can go to shop.drmiller.com and take a look at some of the materials that I've prepared that may help you in doing well in your life, self-healing, transforming your life, your relationships, or even doing something about what's happening globally. Abolish anxiety. 4 different steps in the program so that you can turn anxiety off unless there's a physical battle you need to fight right now. You don't need to walk around in fear. You can change it. There's serenity prayer, in which I go into the real essence of what the serenity prayer is telling us about how to use wisdom to choose how we want to think and feel. And then for those who are globally oriented, there's healing our planet, the steps that I think can help us make the moves I suggest in my book, Our Culture on the Couch. 7 steps to global healing, which you can also find there at shop.drmiller.com. And you can also find Awakening the Leader Within. And that's in light of my beliefs that every one of us needs to be a leader right now if we're going to make a change in everything. Here's how to awaken that leader. Shop.drmiller.com. You can also go to my informational website, drmiller.com. Okay, we're going to talk about now the hijacking of your brain. Our lives have been doubly hijacked. First by our 500,000-year-old monkey brain that reacts with illness-producing stress to the very modern and very different world. On top of that, our lives have been hijacked by our cultural overlords and their thousands of attention engineers using mass hypnotic techniques to manipulate us. We've been hijacked into believing that happiness comes from having more or bigger. Prosperity is reached by going into debt. Maybe the country ought to take a look at this before we raise the debt ceiling again. That health is going to be taken care of by a sick care system, which can only function if you have symptoms, and that's what it does, is treat those symptoms. Patriotism, we're taught, is the result of fear and propaganda. We get scared and then we act a certain way, and that's called patriotism. I think it is not. And we've been taught that the kind of thinking we should use is the old paradigm. No. Now, we've talked about system 1 and system 2. System 1, which is basically the monkey mind, that unconscious part of the mind. It works fast. Its defining characteristics are that it's unconscious, it's effortless and automatic, and we don't have self-awareness or control. That's because it's unconscious. What you see is all there is the belief of that part of the mind. Doesn't think there's anything missing. Its role is to assess a situation and react, often reacting with stress. System 2, our higher mind, what lives in our prefrontal cortex, is slow. You gotta stop, wait, slow down and think about things. Its defining characteristics are that it's deliberate and conscious. It's effortful. You have to work to think about things. It's a controlled mental process that uses self-awareness and control, logical, and it's skeptical as well as logical. And its role is to seek new and missing information, to make intentional decisions and look for wholeness and completeness. And so let's just have a few minutes to experience system 1. And I want you to look at this, which you've probably seen before, 2 horizontal lines. Which one looks the longest? Now, you've probably seen this before and you've been tricked and you measured, and sure enough, They're exactly the same length, but they look differently, even though you know that they're the same length. So there are 6 circles on the left, 6 circles on the right, and then there's a circle in the middle of the ones on the left, a circle in the middle ones on the right. Which of those middle circles is the largest? Well, you've probably figured out that they're both the same size, but they look different, don't they? Okay, here's a 9-dot problem. You have to draw 4 straight lines without lifting your pencil from the paper, such that it goes through every dot on that page. Try it now with your finger. Extremely difficult for most of it. I'll show you the answer later. Or look at this. You see the horizontal lines? Are they parallel? Are they level? They sure don't look that way. They seem like they're wiggling up and down. But I assure you, they're perfectly parallel. And you may know that too, but they don't look that way. Well, it's the same thing here. Read this out loud. Bird in the bush. And now proofread it. When you see something like that, you just read it right through and you don't see the is reproduced, because your deeper mind already decides what it thinks is going on, and that's what you end up seeing. Which of these guys is the tallest? You're right. They're all exactly the same. I cut out the guy in the left and moved him over so you can see they're the same size. You look at this. Now, what do you see? May see 2 nudes, 2 people, but children don't. Children see dolphins. I'll go a little closer. Maybe you can see them too. But your deeper mind doesn't see that because it's so distracted by that other image that's there. The 9-dot problem, 4 straight lines, so you go through every dot on the page. And there it is. My, how very simple. But you didn't get it because you didn't come out of the imaginary box. I didn't say there was a box around those 9 dots, but your unconscious mind put a box around those dots. Try it on people. You see that that's true. I want to talk to you about this guy who's a really amazing guy. We all ought to know who this is. That's right. This is Edward Bernays. And Bernays discovered how to manipulate the unconscious minds of the masses. He was a nephew of Sigmund Freud. He read Freud's teachings and thought, we could probably manipulate that unconscious mind for commercial purposes. Now, if someone asks you, what's your standard American breakfast? What comes to mind? Standard, what's the most automatic? That's it. Yeah, eggs and bacon. It wasn't always that way. It wasn't until Edward Bernays came along and got a job working for the Hormel meat packing company. And he decided that he would teach people to eat differently. So he wrote letters to maybe 5,000 doctors and said, do you feel it's better for Americans to have a heavy breakfast before they go out in the morning so that they will have enough energy all day to work? And about 3,000 of doctors said, yeah, we agree. I mean, it was worded in such a way it made sense. And so he put an ad, started putting ads in the paper that said 3,000 doctors agree. A heavy breakfast is good for you. For instance, bacon and eggs, and bacon and ham sales went up enormously after that. Really interesting, huh? And of course, it's not true. We don't, unless you're a laborer, you know, that you really don't need all that in the morning and it's bad for your heart, Then he went to work for the Lucky Strike tobacco company, who wanted to find a way to get more women to smoke because, you know, back in those days in the 20s, you would rarely see a woman smoking. It would raise an eyebrow if she did that in public. They were only allowed to smoke in designated areas or not at all. Women caught violating this rule are actually arrested. So in 1929, Bernays staged an event. He got a bunch of models to walk in front of the Easter parade holding Lucky Strike cigarettes, which he was going to call torches of freedom. And he wrote to the newspapers and said there's going to be a great newsworthy event happening on this particular corner when the Easter parade reaches there. So the photographers were all around, and at a certain signal, the models pulled out their cigarettes, their freedom torches, and demonstrated to everybody that really cool and high society and beautiful models smoke. And that made it okay. And so now we had our ads in the paper. Do you inhale? Everybody's doing it. You may have seen some of these back in the day. Or camels, famously mellow, beautiful women smoking these cigarettes, getting emphysema and lung cancer. Millions of women have gotten these illnesses and died since this was changed. And of course, a lot of men who were health-wise decided to smoke because more doctors smoke Camel than any other cigarette. All of these advertisements to get us to believe that. Well, Bernays went along to work for many, many different presidents, all the way from Woodrow Wilson all the way up to Eisenhower, and used his ideas to manipulate people's perceptions. You want to see more, go to YouTube, completely free. Look at the movie called The Century of the Self. Century of the Self. It's rather shocking. He wrote a book and he called it Propaganda, which was the name he gave to this. When he was working for the government, he said propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government. The Germans got hold of his book and used the things that he taught there to bring the entire nation under the control of the Third Reich. As Joseph Goebbels said, if you tell a lie big enough, and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. And so they did. It's just remarkable. That's one of their meetings. And we see the same kinds of things happening even in our own political sphere, people being manipulated. We talked about System 1 and System 2 before, and Daniel Kahneman is the one who developed that notion. He has a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a bestseller. He also won a Nobel Prize for the work that he did teaching people how to recognize these kinds of things, and if we're smart, to avoid it. One of the examples I think is really nice, has to do with, they got people who were volunteering to be part of a study, and they came in, they were sitting in a little room waiting for the examiner to come in. And the examiner came in with his arms full of things and holding a cup of coffee. And then he says to the experimental subject, would you mind holding my coffee for a moment while I set down all this stuff on the desk? He does that, and he takes the cup back from them in 20 seconds. And then he gives them, whatever the silly test is that they give, because it has nothing to do with the whole experiment, because the experiment really takes place after the people leave the room. Because unbeknownst to the people, some of them he gave a glass of hot coffee, and the others he gave a glass of iced coffee. And on their way out of the building, they're met by another person on the experimental team that questions them, did you notice whether your examiner had a warm personality or a cool personality? And if they were given a warm cup of coffee, they thought he had a warm personality. If they were given a cool cup of coffee, It's the other way around. Experiments has been repeated a zillion times, like the one with the judges, where experienced judges are going to be taking part in this experiment, and they're given a case history to read. And the case history is about a shoplifter who was shoplifted 3 times. This is the 3rd time they've been caught. They've been let go 2 times. This is the 3rd time, so they're going to have some punishment. The question is, how long will this judgment feel that that person should be locked away? And then, but before the judge reads the case, what they say is, part of the study is this: we just want you to throw these 2 dice. And we're going to read the number on the dice, then we'll put them away, and that's it. So the judge says, all right, if you want. He throws the dice, and then they put them away. Well, what the judge doesn't realize is the dice are loaded. They either come up as 3 or 11. Now, the interesting thing is that when the dice come up 3, the judge tends to give the people, the person he's reading the story about, 3 or 4 months of imprisonment. When the dice come up 11, they give him 10 or 11 months of imprisonment. When they talk to the judge and say, did the throwing the dice have anything to do with your decision? The judge says, absolutely not. Again, these are the kinds of studies that demonstrate the degree to which the unconscious mind is always at work. Now, another test they did was in a British office. They had a big vat of coffee there, and people were permitted to come in, grab a cup of coffee when they're on break, and they're not supposed to drop a certain, 20 pence into the can to pay for the coffee. And what they found was people just very rarely put anything in there. Their collections were minimal. And somebody had an idea. So what they did was they got some posters. Some of the posters had pictures of faces with eyes looking directly out. It would seem like they're looking at you, or else they were all flowers. And they would alternate these. And what they found was that on the days that they were the eyes, and you can see here, this is what the eyes look like, and they're interspersed with the roses, and then the dots on the right side indicate how much money was given on that day. And as you can see, they always had a higher amount of money when you had the eyes. People had no idea that it was true, but there they were being affected by it. Okay, here's another one for your consideration. The question is, a bat and a ball costs $1.10 total, right? The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? What's the answer? How fast can you come up with the answer? Bat and ball cost $1.10 total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Well, the correct answer is not 10 cents. It's 5 cents if you work it out, because if the bat is $1.05 and the ball is 5, then the bat costs $1 more than the ball, and together they add up to 1.10. But that's not what your unconscious mind does. Okay, tell you some of the things that you can do to try to get beyond all of this. Of course, these are maybe some fun examples, but that's the part of your mind you want to get to. And that's the part of your mind that is triggered when you feel anxious, afraid, deeply depressed, shocked, angry, rageful. So, as before, begin by entering the deeply relaxed state. That quiets your amygdala, which is where all fear and anxiety and stress come up. Then you go to a place such as your control room or your special place where you can look beyond whatever the situation is, the current situation, where you can look intentionally into the future or a past or wherever you want. Then you look at the choices available to you at that moment. You can scream and yell, or you can break a window, or you can go and take a nap, or you can go for a run, or you can call an expert, or you can look up the truth on the internet, or but you're able to contact and utilize your wisdom and your spiritual guidance within. And then you choose which of these options is the most likely to bring about the future that you most desire. And then you visualize yourself achieving it. I'm sure most of you by now are aware of these steps overall. Yeah. And then once you've decided, you create a step-by-step plan for how you can put it into action. A few other things that you can do, particularly for what we're dealing with regarding the electioneering that's going to be happening. First of all, be suspicious of those who choose the old paradigm. They're angry, they're insistent, they're yelling, they're critical. Be wary of those who rely on name-calling, attacks, and they're doing that. And of course, they say, well, this is okay. These are just words. But they ignore the fact that this stimulates the more violent members of their political base, which then leads those people to send death threats and to even act on those death threats and go out and injure. Words are not harmless. They're very powerful. Be wary of those who attack others without having other plans, without having a logical plan of their own to follow. Learn to create real relationships in your life. Work towards the truth, towards openness and honesty, trust in your relationships. How to be vulnerable and to truly share. Learn how to recognize the kind of people you can truly trust and avoid the others. Learn what sociopathy is and realize the folly of trusting a sociopath or a narcissist, even if he or she is fighting for what you believe. Understand that those who will lie for you are highly likely to lie to you. As the old saying goes, someone who will steal for you will steal from you. Create or join communities who respect opponents as well as friends, who communicate according to these deeper values that we as Americans, we as intelligent people should be attending to and believing in and acting in accordance with, who have deep values similar to yours. Look for people who do not use anger, bullying, or emotional blackmail to shift you to their way of thinking. Connect with people who are solidly based in the new paradigm, who look for goodness and connection, wholeness, positive collaboration before they turn to old paradigm, black and white, us versus them thinking. Sometimes you have to. When war, you have to do that, but only after you've paid attention. Pay attention to what things you read, periodicals, newspapers, magazines. Be very aware when you're reading an article of someone that has an agenda. You can see the old paradigm thinking by negative characterizations, emotional voicing, rolled eyes, and other verbal and nonverbal cues that might convince your subconscious of one thing instead of letting your conscious, intelligent mind put the facts together for yourself. So avoid those people. And if you can't avoid them, if you must be exposed to them, take the time to read opposing views. When possible, choose presentations that try to present the best points of both sides or the many sides. That's about as far as we get to go today. If you have some ideas that I can use, that we can use, send them to me. Particularly ideas about how we can deal with this coming scourge of lies and violence and disrespect that we're. Again, I guess I'm a futurist because usually future's been coming out the way I expected, at least in many circumstances. Use some of the tools that I've shared with you, and remember this. This will probably be available to you to see a video of in another week after I edit it down. So in closing, let me just mention again what I think might be valuable for you if you go to shop.drmiller.com. Abolish anxiety, serenity prayer. These are all instant downloads. For those who still use CDs, we have those. Healing our planet, awakening a leader within, and our culture on the couch. There's a lot more than that there, but why don't you go and take a look at it and enjoy. Shop.drmiller.com. Learn more about my work at this informational site, which is drmiller.com. So until next time, be well, take care of yourself, and by all means, relax and stay tuned.